Hey, this is Jay, Brick Tech Support for LSP Facilitators, and we're going to take a look at plate-to-plate connections using some of the various pieces in the landscape and connection sets. We'll start with Technic, and if you want more information on how to identify some of the more technical pieces and the concept of pin and socket, I've got a separate video for that. Might help you understand some of the ways that we're going to make connections here with these pieces. So let's start with these. Plate-to-plate connections with Technic is great. In this pin and socket, we can do some really interesting things. So for example, let's try connecting this one. We're going to use that pin from this axle. We'll stick that on the plate there, and then we just need to have a different axle piece with that pin on a different one. And that gives us, I mean, it's pretty solid. It's not going anywhere. So this type of connection, when the model moves, it's really going to push the other one around, right? If we connect it in a different way, where the pins are up, what that will do, so now the pins on these two plates are going up instead of side to side. What that does, and we can use this type of Technic piece for that as well. Now we get that it's rigid, but it will allow some movement there between the pieces. So just changing the direction of where the pin faces will change how that either moves or doesn't move between build plates. Other pieces that are based on that pin and socket are these like little I don't know what these are called, like little fence piece type thing. I'm sure these are struts or supports or something. You can correct me in the comments like usual. But same thing, we can put the pin straight up in the air and then make our connection using that socket end on there. And then we get a different type of connection, right? It's going to wiggle all over the place. So we can use it that way. These other interesting pieces that we have are these little struts. They've got some little springs built into it, so it's more of a conceptual idea of connecting those together. That idea that there's some kind of give between each of the plates. Another connection that uses that socket and pin idea, if we've run out of pieces like this, we can actually use gears. Now gears have that 2x2 pattern that allows us to place it and snap it onto other system pieces. And there's another pin that we can use that's an axle on one side and split on the other. And we can put that in there. And let's see if I've got another. Oh, I do. I've got another gear with a axle and pin. And I can use that to connect some of the Technic together using those pins and socket idea. So if we need to employ some other pieces because stuff's running low, we can always use those. Some other really fun connection pieces that are included in the connections kit are these little flexible tubes. And so connecting from plate to plate, let's see if we can do one here. I like using the pin that's straight up. And these, you can find pieces that have them in different directions as well. So if going up isn't appropriate, you could change it to something else. But we can combine these tubes and these flexible pieces here. And then we can slip these on top of the pins. And it gets pretty rigid. It's a pretty good connection there that stays solid, but it does have that kind of springiness to it. And these can be really long, and like I mentioned before, you can find other pieces where it would put the connection more parallel to the surface of the table, and that might be more appropriate. Let's see if we got another one. Here we go. And you could do it in this fashion as well. So just depending on what piece you use, if the pin is up or to the side, we can get some interesting connections there using these flexible tubes. So ladders can be used to make model-to-model connections. It provides this telescoping effect, which is kind of interesting. You can see how I have them attached here, kind of stair step up and then down. I'm trying to keep my endpoints level. If you were to keep stacking up, 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 and up, you can certainly do that, but then once you get to the other end, you're going to have to add height to your connection. This one, I'm just trying to make it a little bit, even across the bottom there. So what does that connection look like on each of the plates? I'm glad you asked. So what we're going to use is just 2x2s in this example. I'll put one here, put one here, and then I will snap the end of the ladder right in there. These are 1x2s, the space in between the rungs, so you can use the 2x3s or the and such. Anything that has the stud pattern on it, you can snap those right in. I'll put that one on this end, and now I get that telescoping effect, but it's not going to spin, right? I'm not going to get any kind of pivot. So if you want to provide a pivot to the ends here, we can do that using the turntable. And you can either, attach it to the ladder itself, or you can do it on the bottom of the 2x2, which I'm going to do in this case. I'll just put that on this end. I'll put that on this end. Okay, and now we get not only the telescoping, but we get that pivot as well, so that you could modify it in that way. So yeah, kind of interesting way to use ladders as a connection to model. So another really fun set of connectors are these black DUPLO hose pieces. And there's two different types in the kit that I found. This one has a center stud connection point, and then these two little grabby hands at the end. And I'm sure that's the technical term, grabby hand, right? And then we've got this hose nozzle piece that has the stud connector on one end, and then the end of the hose can fit into the top of a DUPLO block stud. So let's use our DUPLO brick to standard base plate connection trick that we saw in another video. So we've got those on there. It gives us a nice stable connection there. And then we'll use the center point on the hoses. Let's do something like this so they're attached. And then we can start connecting them like this. We can snap them into those grabby hands. I'm going with the name grabby hand. So then we get this kind of springy, only gonna let you get so close type connection, which is kind of interesting. And then the hose piece here, you can use this end. We'll plug into the top of one of these, or the top of the stud on the DUPLO as well. So that'd just be another option of using this to make a connection. So if you don't have space to put down a DUPLO block, we can actually use a standard brick with an axle. So let's take a look at that. So we can also connect the hoses to axle pieces. Those little grabby hands will snap on there. So let's see what that might look like. I've got a block here and a block here. And so I've got that axle piece already in place. I'll put another one here. It slips in there, that little plus shape pattern. And then we can get those little grabby hands and stick them on like that. Kind of gives us a pivot point, but we still maintain that kind of springiness that will keep them apart. You can also do a connection between grabby hand and grabby hand. Since we know that they'll fit on an axle piece, you can slip another axle in here, or you can use one of these white pieces too that's also in the kit. Just kind of do something like this. Maybe slide that down a little bit, and then you've got that, and then we get another pivot point between there. So really fun pieces to use, kind of unusual. They can get a little unwieldy at times, but yeah, just kind of another option that you have to make connections between plates. Other common connectors, of course, are the strings and the chains. I've also heard of facilitators using other materials such as pipe cleaners and kite string and yarn and all that great stuff. So, don't feel limited to just what's in the kits. You can combine them with other materials that you might have around. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. Some of the more unusual pieces that we looked at to make connections. I think they're a lot of fun. assigning meaning, asking the participants, why did you choose that connection? And just having them use their imagination to assign meaning to all of these different types of connectors. So I hope that was helpful. Any questions or comments or some of your favorite ways to make connections, please put it below. I'd love to hear them. And until next time, play well.